Hello, my name is Mick McCann. I'm from the west of Ireland, but I've been living in Vancouver, Canada for 4 years now. And I've been vegan for about 8.5 years and vegetarian about 5 years before that. So that's a long time. I think it's vegetarian was the first point because I lived around sheep. I lived in a really rural area, so lots of sheep, lots of cows, not a lot of pigs. It wasn't. I don't think it'd be like large-scale factory farming, but still horrible. Loads of sheep and everything, so I couldn't sit there and play with them in the fields and then go home and eat them. So that was the first, I think, connect. And then you started listening to punk bands, and animal rights was a huge thing. And then it was the next step. But then the idea of veganism, I'd never met a vegetarian before, so the idea of veganism was way further than what I was probably able for at that time. And I always perceived, like when you're young, you perceived vegetarians as like hippies or soft, which is the opposite, or not even, doesn't matter. But when I was young, when you're a 16, 15-year-old boy, you assume that they're all like hippies and weirdos. That's great that they are. I started reading more about milk and how horrible it was, and how milk is essentially just veal juice, and the babies are always pulled away from their mothers 2 days later. And then eggs, the chickens are put through horrible torture. They turn off the lights for days on end and electrocute them just to restart their bodies into production. And one time this guy came selling chickens to our house, like in the big back of a truck, and he pulled these chickens out in like little shelves, like you would pull out like a screwdriver, and the shed was just black, and he just grabbed them like that, started throwing them into bags. I was selling them to my parents. I remember my dad is like a full-time, lifetime omnivore, and even he was like he couldn't eat chicken for a long time after that. I think punks have always been pretty forward with their politics. I mean, they're still, I mean, some very silly ones, and they say a lot of stupid things, but in general, I think the culture was, what's the word? But they were like a backlash. It was a complete backlash to society from the 70s. So all their views were pretty much, they viewed everything as oppression. So the government was oppressive, how men treated women were oppressive, how people treated minorities was oppressive. So they definitely had a pretty strong stance point of being anti-racist, anti-homophobic, feminist. So I think animal rights was like the next connection, because you can't, like for punks to sit there and eat a burger and then preach about oppression is pretty hypocritical, even though a lot of them still do, and I find that pretty bogus for me. I do a lot of like fur protesting outside of stores, a lot of in-store fur protesting. We've done a lot of grocery store protests to bring awareness to the idea of humane meat from greenwashing from a lot of companies. I do a lot of wheat pasting, a lot of cheeky wheat pasting, do some leafleting, some benefit gigs, do it through music as well, a lot. I need to do more though. If you look at any anti-oppression movement throughout the history of time, and everyone, well not everyone, but they've all been led through protesting and chanting. They're still doing it, even movements today that aren't connected with animal rights. They still protest, they still chant, because sometimes you're not going to win a war with like meditation and incense and just being peaceful about it. Sometimes that works, and I think they're really good to go hand in hand and not be too aggressive, and you have to be balanced, and it has to come from a place of peace and love for sure, but some things need to be done aggressively if hundreds of millions of animals are getting murdered every year, I guess. If they're all getting their throats slit, you can't just be peaceful all the time, because it is an action that needs to be dealt with today and not in 50 years, which is really upsetting. They look like mostly they're outside of stores with signs, a lot of chanting. Generally, we're all very peaceful people, but it could, I guess, be perceived as aggressive if you see 10 people chanting. But it's just to bring awareness. If you're walking down a street and you walk past a building and you see 10 people chanting, you're gonna be, why are they chanting? And then they come over and talk to us, or they're chanting fur, and then the seed in your head, it plants a seed in your head to be like, oh, what is fur? Why is fur wrong? or why is killing chickens wrong, where if you were just walking down the street, you wouldn't see that. It's all about planting a seed, I think. Not yelling, or not telling people what they have to do, but just giving them seeds that in a week or 2 weeks or 2 years, they can be like, okay, that made sense. Because you wouldn't see that otherwise. Been bans for many, many years, and I've had these pretty strong beliefs for many of years, but I've never been able to, I guess, sit down and write lyrics. I have imagery that was able to connect to animal rights, because if you're sharing an art with other people, you sometimes have to find a middle ground, which is totally cool. But it's nice doing in a band now that a strong point of the band is animal rights in our lyrics and imagery. So that's been super amazing. I've never been able to do that, so I'm super stoked. Okay, so we're called Gestation, named after gestation crates, which are a horrible invention. And we're peaceful, so it works. I do have vegan tattoos. I got this like a day after I went vegan when I was younger, and the guy was like, you probably should wait until you get it done to stick it out over a couple months, and I just said no. This is my wife. She's vegan. This is my buddy Todd. He passed away a year ago. He was a big animal rights activist as well. He was pretty into the Stop UBC animal research, and he passed away. He fell off a mountain. He was awesome. He did a lot of animal rights through his lyrics as well. Cool guy. Used to save a lot of dogs. I would say go visit an animal sanctuary, or watch, like Earthlings was a pretty big one. I knew a lot of people that went vegan overnight pretty much from that. Go down and look at your burger when you're eating it and ask what its face looked like, I think, is a big. Cowspiracy is a really good documentary. Go talk to a vegan is a really good option as well. Some books are really good. Sorry, I'm pretty dopey. I'd say visit an animal sanctuary was a big thing for me. Just look into the eyes of something you're going to eat and then say if you can eat it, really.